Good morning. This is Greg Cook with the National Weather Service in Spokane. I will be the main presenter of the briefing this morning. We also have Jeremy and Lori. They can answer questions on the question room within this briefing as well. So we'll leave that slide up there for a minute. Some of our media partners like to have the spelling of our names, and then we'll get started with the briefing here in a minute or two. Okay, let's go ahead and get started with the conversation for today. We're going to talk about several things, but we have four main bullet points that we're going to talk about. The first three bullet points have to do with the discussion of wintry precipitation. We have three rounds that we're going to discuss through this briefing. We're going to talk about a cold snow on Friday. We're going to talk about snow and freezing rain transition and into rain over the holiday weekend. And we're also going to talk about Monday and Tuesday, the transition to a mainly mountain snow and valley rain situation. And with that warmer transition next week to a wetter and more mild type of weather pattern, we're going to talk about the melt off that is going to occur over portions of our region and the potential flooding concerns and the ramifications with that. So this is a very busy slide. It has a lot of tiles, so go ahead and pick the location that is most representative for your area, and we'll go ahead and discuss some of the more significant things that we're going to talk about. As far as the wintry precipitation, let's focus on the Cascades. That's where we have the potential for the highest impacts. We have our oranges and reds, so our moderate to major impacts potentially for Friday, Saturday, and into Sunday with the system coming in. And we're looking for major or significant accumulations of mountain snow and also the potential for some ice accumulations that we will discuss as far as freezing rain in parts of the Cascades. We also have the freezing rain mentioned in a lot of our central and eastern Washington areas for the weekend. And then going into the Tuesday and Wednesday timeframe, we have some moderate impacts for flooding, and this is mainly over southeast Washington and the southern and central Idaho panhandle. So let's go ahead and talk about some of the details of the forecast here. Here are the high and low temperatures that we have in the forecast for the next 6 days or so. So we're starting off quite cold. We had very cold temperatures this morning, some of the coldest air that we've experienced in several years. It is going to continue to be cold through the day today and into tomorrow, but not as cold as what we experienced this morning. We're going to have some clouds and some milder air slowly overtaking the Pacific Northwest. So we're starting that transition to a more mild regime on Friday, but with that, that's going to bring us some snow. As we get into the last 3 days of the forecast here, we're looking at much warmer temperatures than we've seen in our part of the region for probably a good month or so. And our attention especially turns to places in southeast Washington and the Lewiston-Clarkston Valley. Look at the Lewiston temperature forecast for Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. We're looking for highs in the 40s and temperatures well above freezing. So that milder air mass coming in toward next week is going to raise our concerns for melting snow and what that may do to some of our small streams. So this is going to be the most complicated slide in our briefing, but I think it does a nice job of telling the story of what our pattern change is going to be like. So first of all, if we look here at the dates, if you follow my cursor, under the word contours, you see the dates clicking by in this animation. And this animation starts on the 23rd and runs through the 28th. So we're looking at Friday all the way through the middle of next week. And what this is a map of is this is the Pacific Basin here. And the star represents where the inland Northwest is. So what we have had over the last several weeks is a predominantly northerly flow with our jet stream, and that has kept us cold with periods of snow. What we see here with this depiction of the jet stream and the moisture associated with it is a transition to a more westerly or southwesterly flow regime for Friday all the way into much of next week. So as a point of reference, we see the little dots down here. That's Hawaii if you're looking at my cursor. And at times you've probably heard of the terminology Pineapple Express. We also throw around terminology about atmospheric rivers. So the colors or the shading here, once we start getting into the reds and purples, these are areas where the atmosphere is moving a lot of moisture around quickly. And the colors here, once we get into the reds and purples, are strong to extreme to exceptional amounts of atmospheric moisture being pushed around. So that is just kind of a slide to help show you how we're looking at a much different weather pattern shaping up with more moisture and moisture coming from the subtropics. So it's going to be warmer. So talking about warmer, here is a graphic that we've used in some of our briefings here recently, where the red boxes are the high temperature forecast, the blue boxes are the low temperature forecast, and we're working our way through this chart here from left to right. So today, yesterday, we're moving to Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday as we go through this graphic here. And the size of the boxes indicates the confidence level with how many models are producing a high temperature forecast within that box. So the bigger the box, the wider the variability of that forecast. The smaller the boxes, the narrow ones, as we get into Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, indicate that there's good model agreement in this forecast. So this is a forecast for the Spokane International Airport. So starting Thursday morning, this is when we had our coldest night last night. Last night, I believe we dropped to -10, -11 degrees. And now we're looking at the moderating temperatures Friday and Saturday. That's going to come with a price because we're going to experience some snow during that transition. But look at Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of next week, where we're looking at high temperatures with a relatively high degree of confidence in the mid to upper 30s and possibly even touching 40 degrees on Tuesday. And even more importantly are the low temperatures. Those are forecast to remain in the low 30s. So several days here of temperatures well above freezing and even keeping our low temperatures at night above freezing. And those low temperatures at night above freezing can really accelerate our snow melt. So we talked about 3 different rounds of precipitation that could be wintry over the next several days. So we're going to talk about those 3 rounds of precipitation. First, we're going to start off with the Friday and Friday evening. Remember, it's still going to be cold. So it's going to be predominantly a snow event for the majority of the region. So let's talk about that. So as you remember, we're going to start out cold. The most likely temperature forecast for the selected cities here is the bigger temperature on the right. So if we're picking out a city, Coeur d'Alene, for example, our most likely low temperature for tomorrow morning, Friday morning, will be -2, with a spread of potentially as cold as -7 or potentially as warm as +8. A lot of that depends on how quickly our clouds increase through the night and how much warm air is coming into the region. But you can see if you look at the most likely temperature for each one of these spots, it's still quite cold with the potential for negative temperatures once again in a lot of these areas, especially along and north of I-80, or excuse me, I-90. So that first round of precipitation that's going to come in Friday into Friday night, it's going to be all snow for the entire region. It looks like a mainly light snow amount with a couple of inches of snow across central Washington, northeast Washington, and into far north Idaho. The areas that will likely receive more snowfall are in the Cascades, where we could get 8 to 12 inches of snow in a 24-hour period around Stevens Pass. And we also see higher amounts in the central and southern Idaho Panhandle and across the Palouse, where some amounts here could be 4 inches or more, especially when you get into the higher terrain of Shoshone County. So that is the first round of our precipitation. Let's move into the weekend, the holiday weekend, Saturday and Sunday. This is Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. We all are looking for more warmer air coming into the region. So we're going to start out with snow in a lot of our areas, but unfortunately, we're going to be talking about a transition to freezing rain and then even rain in some areas over the weekend. So let's detail some of this. First, let's talk about the snow forecast. So here is our moderate to low confidence for our snow amounts across the region. And you can see the further north you go, the more significant amounts of snowfall we are forecasting for the 2-day period of Saturday into Sunday. So this is a 48-hour period. So these amounts are generally not all that high when you're talking about the Columbia Basin, Spokane area, and even up into our northern valleys. The area that does look like it will have the most significant snowfall over the weekend, Saturday into Sunday, will be our Cascades. So travel across the Cascade passes may be impacted. So this would be an important thing for travelers to monitor the pass conditions to see whether they're open during the holiday travel period. So there will be a transition period from Saturday into Sunday from snowfall over some of these areas, especially in the southeast part of Washington and into the central part of Washington. So it looks like some light snow first occurring with the transition to some freezing rain. Let's take a look at some freezing rain probabilities here. This first image is the probability of ice accumulation of greater than 1/100th of an inch. So we're talking about the probability of just a glazing here. And this is a Saturday and into Sunday time frame, so a 48-hour period. So you can see our probabilities are the highest of getting these trace amounts, at least trace amounts of freezing rain, is in the Columbia Basin, Moses Lake area, out on the West Plains, and then getting into the east slopes of the Cascades. There's some pretty high probabilities. Say Wenatchee is up to 84% probability of getting at least 1/100th of an inch of ice during that 2-day period. So let's move into a higher amount, a higher threshold. This is a probability of ice accumulation of greater than 1/10 of an inch. And our areas of concern begin to shrink down a little bit more, where it looks like a lot of it starts in western parts of Spokane County. And then our probabilities begin to increase as we get into Lincoln, Grant, parts of Adams, Douglas, and especially Chelan counties, where the probability of getting at least 1/10 of an inch of ice accumulation in places like around Leavenworth increased to around 80 to 90%. So that's starting to be a little bit more concerning. But keep in mind, we will have a little bit of snow prior to this transition to freezing rain. So not all roadways will be bare with freezing rain falling on bare pavement. That is when it starts to become a significant issue. How about 1/4 of an inch? Probabilities of 1/4 of an inch of ice or more really start to bullseye parts of the Cascades and some of the valleys where it's really tough to scrub out air that's below freezing. And we have as much as 70 to 80% chance of 1/4 inch of ice up around Leavenworth, Coles Corner, up to the Stevens Pass area. So we're looking for some pretty significant snow amounts followed by freezing rain amounts in this part of Chelan County. And so there are some probabilities there for you to talk about the transition from snow to ice, Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. All right, let's move on to the third round of precipitation in the Monday and Tuesday time frame. This is when snow levels will be higher. So we're looking at mainly mountain accumulations Snow levels over the Idaho Panhandle along the I-90 corridor for Monday and Tuesday will climb to as high as 5,000 to 6,000 feet. So there may even be periods where Lookout Pass is experiencing rain and not snow. Our snow levels, as you get further north toward the Canadian border, they will be lingering more in the 2,500 to 3,500 foot range. So we may see wetter accumulations of snow in places like Bonners Ferry, Colville, and Omak, with some transitions back and forth from snow to rain there. But our confidence is higher that precipitation will remain mainly snow in places like the Methow Valley, parts of the Lake Chelan area, excuse me, and into certain parts of the northern Cascades there. So this is the forecast again for Monday into Tuesday, with an additional significant accumulation for the Cascades. All right, we talked about our 3 rounds of wintry type precipitation. Let's start to focus on the warmer and wetter conditions for next week. This is the 6 to 10 day outlook from the Climate Prediction Center. It's valid December 27th through the 31st. And we're looking at an 80% chance of it being warmer than average across our region, and a 70% chance of it above average precipitation during that time frame as well. So we're looking at some additional chances for wet weather in the December 27th through 31st timeframe. So that begins to raise our concerns about the melt off in the December 26th through 31st timeframe. So some potential impacts with this runoff could be water in basements in some areas, rises on small streams, and clogged storm drains. We have a lot of snow and snow berms in some of our urban areas, and we've seen this before, where we have the warm up and the slop fest that begins, and then having some clogging and some urban flooding issues with that. So over the weekend, it may be a good idea for folks to get out there and start doing some work unclogging their drains. Some of the areas that we have the most concern about as far as small stream rises is in the map included on the inset map in the lower right-hand corner. Paradise Creek is one of our rivers that is forecast to go above flood stage by about the middle of next week. The minor flood stage is 9.2 feet. Current forecast is 9.3. This is a relatively low confidence forecast this many days out, and a lot of it will depend on how much rainfall we do happen to get over this particular basin. But we can expect similar responses in some of our small streams, including Latah Creek that flows up into southern and central Spokane counties, Rock Creek, Asotin Creek, Lawyer Creek, and Lapway Creek. And all of these creeks are generally within this magenta circle inset map here. So that is something for those with hydrological concerns to keep an eye on as we get into that warmer and wetter time period next week. Here's another map displaying some of our concerns. The map on the left is where our stream flows are at right now. And if your resolution on your computer screen isn't very good, I apologize, but the little streams that are in the blue colors, the blue, the teal, and the purple here are running above average. And we see some of that there in the Blue Mountains, we see that in the Camas Prairie, and we see that in the Palouse. So these are areas that are already above normal stream flows over the last 2 weeks. So increased runoff next week will we have a jump start or a head start in higher than average stream flows in these areas already. So if we add additional runoff into that, these areas could be prone to flooding or significant rises, to say the least. The map on the right here is the snow cover that exists over our region, and we can see that we have some significant depths of snow over southeast Washington, the Camas Prairie, and parts of the central and southern Idaho Panhandle. And so the combination of snowmelt and runoff from rain that we anticipate next week has us most concerned about these areas that we have in the circles. So we've seen some rain on snow events in the past, and here are three of some of our noteworthy events that we're going to try to draw comparisons to. February of 1996, so this occurred later in the season. It had a deep snowpack, much deeper than what we're dealing with now, and it had 5 days of heavy rain. And this one produced historic flooding on the Palouse, the St. Joe, Paradise Creek, Asotin Creek, and Lapway Creeks. We are not looking at an event that significant coming up here in the next several days. We don't have nearly this deep a snowpack, and we're not looking for nearly as much rain. And we're not looking to warm up as significantly as February 1996. So that is an event that is fresh in a lot of people's minds, but it's probably not a very good analog to what we are looking at coming up next week. January 1997, we had a moderate snowpack. We had 4 days of rain, and that produced moderate flooding on a lot of the same creeks that we mentioned here before. In January of 2005, we had a light snowpack, 3 days of rain, and we had some minor flooding on the Palouse, Paradise, and Latah Creeks. So if we were to draw a comparison of what we see coming up, we would probably lean more towards what happened in January 2005 and possibly what happened in 1997. So those are kind of our thoughts as far as what may occur next week. All right, in summary, winter travel conditions will be common through the holiday weekend, first with the light snow on Friday, and then the transition to snow and some light freezing rain accumulations Saturday into Sunday. We're keeping a close eye on the warm up and the melt off for next week. And we also urge folks in flood prone areas to keep an eye on poor drainage, rises on rivers and streams, and folks that live in urban areas should probably do some proactive maintenance to try and unclog our storm drains. So here's what's happening with our briefing schedule. We will continue to send email briefings through the holiday weekend. At this point in time, we do not have plans to do a live briefing tomorrow, Friday, or through the holiday weekend. We don't think there would probably be a very big audience for that. But our question to you, the users, is whether you would like a live briefing on Monday. So do we want one? We appreciate you chiming in with that. And if you have any questions, we always appreciate emails or calls to our office. And we have our email address here on the bottom. And we also have our phone number here on the bottom as well. So we'll go ahead and open up. I'm going to unmute folks here. All right. So you should have the opportunity to unmute your microphone, and we would ask for you to either raise your hand or just shout out and ask us a question. All right. So far, I haven't heard anything, but maybe I don't have my microphone or my speakers up.
I haven't heard anything either, Greg. If people want to ask questions, they also need to unmute themselves as well to speak.
Hey, Greg. This is Mike over in the TMC.
Hi, Mike.
when does the snow start tomorrow in Spokane, and what is the confidence level in the 2 to 3 inch amount? And what is the time span, the start to end time?
Jeremy or Lori, would you be able to field the questions on the specifics? They have some better data in front of them. I'm kind of in the quiet briefing room.
Can you hear me, Greg?
I hear you.
Okay. So it looks like for Spokane, the snow will be moving in by between 7 and 8 in the morning, and will continue through about 3 or 4 in the afternoon for the Spokane metro area. It would linger a little bit longer as you go towards Coeur d'Alene or southeast Spokane County.
What's our high temperature in the forecast for tomorrow, Lori?
Forecasted high for Friday for Spokane at the airport is 16 degrees. And down towards like the downtown valley area is about 18.
Okay. So yeah, so this is the really cold kind of snow, which doesn't maybe respond to some of your treatment options as well. Mike.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, did that answer your question, Mike?
It did, yep.
Okay. Thank you, Lori.
A question about Monday, Tuesday snow in Snoqualmie. Your map said estimated 18 to 24 at Stevens Pass. I didn't see a Snoqualmie Pass estimate, and I guess I say this because I have son and daughter-in-law and grandkids traveling over from the west side on Monday, but I just want to be able to tell them what we can expect.
Okay. And keep in mind that this is a 48-hour snow amount forecast.
You bet.
Looking at the color scale here, we are looking at somewhere on the order of 4 to 6 inches at Snoqualmie Pass. There is going to be some uncertainty with that because the snow levels are going to be, there's going to be a big difference from south to north in what our snow levels are going to be like in this time frame. That's why Stevens Pass has almost 4 to 5 times more snow than Snoqualmie. Stevens Pass is a little bit higher in elevation, of course, but it's also further north. Yeah, there will be the potential for snow there, and there may even be some pockets of freezing rain potentially early Monday morning as well.
Is that what you expect? It'll come most likely in the morning?
I would say as far as snow levels, our snow levels will be able to support snow accumulations at Snoqualmie Pass most likely in the early part of this Monday to Tuesday event.
Great. All right. Thank you very much.
Hello, this is Kathy with Colville Tribes.
Hi, Kathy.
Hi, I'm wondering about the flooding, and I'm wondering because we have a lot of burn scar areas and a lot of trees along the roads that have been burned. Okay. And I'm just wondering, will there be flooding in those burn scar areas that could possibly cause the trees to fall down onto the roads?
Kathy, at this point in time, we're not as concerned about a complete melt off up in the Colville as we are points further south, say from Pullman and southward. Your snowpack is deeper, first of all, so it's going to be able to absorb some of the runoff from rain that comes your way. And also, your temperatures up in the Colville reservation aren't going to warm up as significantly as around Lewiston and Pullman. Let's take a look at your temperature tile here. So let's look at Colville here. So what I really like to see here in Colville is your high temperatures for Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. We're looking at mid-30s to around 40. But what is more encouraging is the low temperatures. Your low temperatures are going to dip below freezing, it looks like, most of those nights next week. So that slows the rate of snow melt. So you're not going to be experiencing what we see, say here, if you look at Pullman, where we have our low temperatures remaining above freezing and warmer daytime temperatures than what we're forecasting for Colville. So I wouldn't say you're completely out of the woods, but your chances for melting off massive amounts of snow quickly is going to be lower than what we would see up further north, or excuse me, further south.
And Greg, I checked our forecast, and that does apply as well to the Nispelum and Keller area, what you were saying about Colville with their lows staying below freezing.
Okay. Okay. Did that help, Kathy?
Yes.
All right. Anyone else? These are great questions. Anyone else?
What do you see for flooding on the Coeur d'Alene River?
Coeur d'Alene River. Lori, do you have a Coeur d'Alene forecast? That one's not expected to go to action stage, is it?
No, it's not expected to go to action stage at this time.
Okay, so action stage is even below flood stage. The Coeur d'Alene River, it's a bigger river system than something like, say, Lawyer Creek or Paradise Creek, but we are looking at rises on the small streams that feed into the Coeur d'Alene River, so the river levels will be coming up. One thing that I forgot to mention about a lot of our rivers in the region is the amount of ice that's on them. So if you are concerned about river rises, it may be good to check to see what % of ice cover you may have on your rivers, because the rivers that have a significant amount of ice could experience some ice jamming, which we have seen in late December and January and February over the years, where we get rises on the rivers that break up the ice, and then the ice gets jammed up on bridge abutments or other bottlenecks in the river. So that's something that we're going to be looking at closely next week as well.
Yeah, Greg, I just looked at the Coeur d'Alene at Edenville and Cataldo, and it does show a rise next week, but the probability of reaching flood stage is incredibly low. So that's what I quickly looked at.
Okay. Thank you, Lori. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it did. Thanks.
Yeah, if you look at this map inset here on the bottom right, the river indicators, or the gauges that are blue with the little X on them, those indicate significant amounts of icing on those rivers, and the gauges may not be operating properly at this point, but the cold weather that we have had has produced a lot of ice on our rivers, so that's something to keep in mind.
This is Keith. I'm with Bonner County Aries. On Saturday, Sunday, I have a question about the amount of snow that may come in. I'm about 12 miles west or east of Sandpoint at about 3,000 foot. Best I can see, it probably about, from your graph, 6 to 8 inches, but I'm not sure if I'm reading it right.
Okay.
Probably 4 inches, 4 to 5 inches. And then as you head northeast of Hope, they'll probably see 6 to 8 inches there.
Okay, I'm more northeast of Sandpoint, so.
Okay. Yeah, so probably 3 to 5 inches.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.